The rain had already soaked through his only good shirt, but Marcus Reed didn't care. He sat behind the wheel of his fading Toyota Corolla, staring up at the gleaming glass tower of Kane Global Enterprises, the kind of building that made people like him invisible. He adjusted his tie, the same one he'd worn to every interview for the past 6 months, and whispered, "Come on, man. Don't screw this one up. It wasn't just another job." It was the last chance before eviction day. His 7-year-old daughter, Maya, was at the neighbor's, drawing pictures for him to sell at work because art makes money, Daddy. He smiled weakly, remembering that. She didn't know the refrigerator was empty or that the landlord's final warning was taped to their front door. He looked again at the job posting on his cracked phone screen. Personal driver for Isabelle Kane, CEO of Kane Global, $75,000 annually. Demanding schedule. Requires loyalty and discretion. Note: previous drivers lasted an average of 3 weeks. 3 weeks. That's how long it took the Ice Queen to break them. Still, Marcus whispered to himself, for Maya, anything. Inside the marble lobby, the receptionist's smile was professional but cold. "Mr. Reed, Miss Kane will see you now. Do not be late." He rode the elevator to the 45th floor, watching the numbers climb as his nerves tightened. The doors opened to reveal Isabelle Kane herself, not seated behind a desk but standing like she owned time. Her voice was sharp enough to cut silence. "Mr. Reed, you're on time. That's a rare skill among applicants lately." "Yes, ma'am." "I believe time is respect." Her pale eyes flicked toward him, studying. Most people believe that until they're asked to prove it." She circled him like a general inspecting a soldier. "Your resume says accounting, not transportation. Why the downgrade?" "My company downsized, ma'am. I'm looking for steady work, something I can take pride in." "Driving doesn't sound like a job that requires pride," she said flatly. He met her gaze without flinching. "Being responsible for someone's safety and time, that's trust, ma'am. That matters." For a moment, the corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, more like curiosity. "You speak like a man who's lost things." He nodded once, "and learned to value what's left." She turned toward the window, city lights reflecting against her sleek silhouette. "You start Monday, 6 a.m. Don't make me regret this." When the elevator doors closed behind him, Marcus exhaled, a small laugh breaking through his nerves. He didn't know if he'd been hired or sentenced. Still, a paycheck was a lifeline. And for Maya, that was reason enough to fight through anything, even Isabelle Kane's impossible world. Before we see how Marcus handles his first brutal week, tell me, would you take a job everyone else failed at if it meant saving your family? Type "I would" in the comments. Let's see how many fighters we've got out there. The first morning of Marcus Reed's new job began in darkness. The kind that still clung to the sky. At 4:30 a.m., he brewed instant coffee, buttoned the same white shirt he'd ironed 3 times, and kissed Maya's forehead before whispering, "Daddy's got to go make this one count." By 5:45, he was parked outside the sleek, modern mansion in the hills, the black sedan gleaming like a mirror. At exactly 5:59, the front door opened. Isabelle Kane stepped out. Not a hair out of place, not a second late. She wore a fitted gray suit, sunglasses despite the dawn, and a look that could freeze time. "You're early," she said, sliding into the back seat. "Good, let's see if that lasts." The GPS was already set. She had planned every route, every stop, down to the minute. Marcus drove with precision, glancing in the mirror only when necessary. The silence was sharp, filled with invisible rules he hadn't been told yet. "Slow your turn," she said without looking up from her tablet. "You make me look rushed." "Yes, ma'am." "And the music," she added. "Lower. I need to think." He turned the dial down until only the faint hum of tires filled the space. The rest of the day followed the same rhythm. Meetings, drop-offs, tense phone calls with investors, and her icy commands delivered without emotion. When she wasn't speaking, she was typing. Always typing. Marcus noticed her coffee cup never emptied, her meals never appeared, and her exhaustion never admitted itself. By Wednesday, he knew the pattern of her sighs better than the traffic lights downtown. Late one evening, as they crawled through rush hour, she snapped at someone over the phone. "No, that's not acceptable. Fix it, or I'll find someone who can." She hung up, rubbing her temples. "Tough day?" Marcus asked carefully. She glanced up, surprised that he'd spoken at all. "They're all tough, Mr. Reed. That's the job." "With respect, ma'am," he said, eyes still on the road. "No one can work forever without rest. Even engines need maintenance." For a moment she didn't answer. Then, softly, "I'm not a machine." "No, ma'am," he replied. "You're not." The car filled with quiet. Not tension this time, but thought. When he dropped her off, she paused at the door. "Be here at 6 tomorrow and thank you, Mr. Reed." "For what?" "For not pretending I'm fine." As she walked toward her mansion, Marcus sat for a moment, watching the door close behind her. For the first time, he saw not the Ice Queen, but a woman drowning in expectations she couldn't escape. He turned the key and whispered, "Everyone's fighting something." Then he drove home to his own fight. Overdue bills and a sleeping child who believed her dad could fix anything. How many of you have worked for someone who seemed impossible, until you realized they were just human? Type, been there, if you know what that feels like. By week 3, Marcus had learned every rhythm of Isabelle Kane's life. The meetings, the deadlines, the silence. But nothing prepared him for the phone call that came at 5:15 a.m. on a Monday. It was Mrs. Alvarez, the elderly neighbor who watched Maya. Her voice trembled. "Marcus, I fell. My hip's broken. I'm so sorry, baby, but I can't watch Maya today." Marcus's heart sank. He glanced at the clock. 45 minutes until he had to pick up Isabelle. There was no time to find anyone else. No one to help. No safety net. "Maya, honey," he said softly, shaking her awake. "You're coming with Daddy today. It's bring your daughter to work day, okay?" "Yay," she chirped, hugging him. He didn't share her enthusiasm. When they pulled up to Isabelle's mansion, his stomach was in knots. He stepped out, nerves buzzing. "Miss Kane," he began the moment she appeared. "I know this is highly unprofessional, but I had an emergency." Her eyes darted to the back seat. "That's your daughter." "Yes, ma'am." "I couldn't. Bring her up," he blinked. "Excuse me?" "Your daughter. Bring her to my office. She can stay there while we work." Marcus hesitated, confused. Isabelle's tone hadn't changed. Still firm, but lacking the usual bite. An hour later, Maya sat in Isabelle's sleek glass office, surrounded by coloring books one of the assistants had magically produced. She waved at Isabelle every few minutes, smiling like sunshine in a room that hadn't seen warmth in years. During a meeting, Maya whispered, "Daddy, she looks like she needs a nap." Marcus chuckled quietly, trying not to draw attention, but Isabelle heard. Her pen froze mid-sentence. For the first time she smiled, just barely. When lunch came, Isabelle ordered sushi for herself and a kid's meal for Maya. "It's inefficient to have her hungry," she said flatly when Marcus thanked her, but her eyes softened as she watched the little girl eat fries one by one with pure joy. That evening, as Marcus dropped Isabelle home, she said, "Your daughter is remarkably well behaved." "She's curious and honest," he said. "She told me I should smile more," Isabelle replied. Marcus winced. "I'm so sorry, ma'am." "She's right," Isabelle said simply. Marcus was too stunned to reply. When they got home that night, Maya climbed into his lap and said, "Daddy, Miss Isabelle is sad." "Why do you think that?" "Because she has a big office and no pictures in it." Marcus didn't know what to say, but her words stayed with him all night. The next morning, Isabelle Kane, the woman who didn't tolerate distractions, asked him quietly, "Will Maya be joining us today?" That's when Marcus realized the Ice Queen had finally thawed, and all it took was a 7-year-old's kindness. If you've ever seen a child's heart melt an adult's walls, type "love heals" in the comments. Because sometimes the smallest souls teach the greatest lessons. The following weeks blurred into long drives, quiet mornings, and subtle changes that Marcus almost didn't notice. Isabelle Kane, the woman who never smiled, never slowed, never felt, was starting to change. It began with little things. She stopped snapping orders at him, started saying thank you. Once, when the coffee spilled in the back seat during a sharp turn, she didn't scold him. She laughed. A soft, startled sound, like someone remembering how, one rainy evening, the city lights blurred against the windshield as Isabelle sat silently in the back seat, her phone buzzing with unanswered calls. Marcus could see her reflection in the mirror, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. "Miss Kane," he said gently, "you look like you've been fighting the world all day." She exhaled. "It feels like I've been fighting it my whole life, Mr. Reed." He hesitated, then asked, "Why?" She looked out the window. "When my father died, I inherited everything. The company, the expectations, the enemies. Every man in that boardroom wants to prove I'm weak. So I can't be, ever." Marcus nodded. "Strength isn't pretending you're made of steel. It's surviving when you're tired of fighting." Her eyes met his in the mirror, and for a heartbeat, neither looked away. The moment passed when her phone rang again. Another crisis. "Cancel the charity gala," she said sharply into the phone. "I'm not in the mood to fake smiles tonight." But as she hung up, Marcus said quietly, "Maybe showing up is what people need from you. Not the CEO, just Isabelle." The car went still. Then, softly, she said, "You talk too much for a driver." "And you listen too little for a boss," he said, smiling. A pause. Then, surprisingly, she smiled back. That night, after dropping her home, Marcus found an envelope tucked under the visor. Inside was a folded note written in clean, elegant handwriting. "Thank you for reminding me I'm human." The next morning, Isabelle asked about Maya before even discussing her schedule. "How's she doing in school?" "Straight A's," Marcus said proudly. "She's got your determination." "My determination?" Isabelle laughed softly. "I can't imagine she's that stubborn." "Oh, she's worse," Marcus said, grinning. Something about his smile made Isabelle's voice soften. "You're a good father, Marcus." "She's lucky." He turned, meeting her eyes briefly. "We're both lucky, ma'am. Some people never find purpose. Mine's right at home drawing unicorns." For the rest of the drive, Isabelle didn't touch her phone once, and somewhere between the endless meetings and the late-night calls, something unspoken began forming between them, fragile, undeniable, and terrifying. Neither dared to name it yet, but they both felt it. Have you ever met someone who reminded you what kindness feels like when you'd almost forgotten? Type, "I remember," if that moment changed you too. By the 4th month, the bond between Marcus and Isabelle had grown in quiet, undeniable ways. He had stopped calling her ma'am so rigidly, and she no longer hid behind the sharp edges of authority. It wasn't romance yet, not officially, but it was something that made Isabelle linger a moment longer in the car before heading inside. Something that made Marcus glance at the rearview mirror not just to check traffic, but to catch the trace of a smile he wasn't supposed to see. Then one night, everything changed. They were driving back from a charity event, her first public appearance in weeks. The city lights flickered across her face as she sat silently, her phone face down beside her for once. "Marcus," she said softly, "have you ever made a decision everyone told you was wrong?" He glanced at her reflection. "Every day. Being a single dad wasn't part of anyone's plan for me. But it's the only right thing I ever did." She nodded, as if weighing his words. "I just turned down a merger that could have made us billions. My board will call it weakness. What do you call it?" "Integrity," she whispered. "But it feels like failure." Marcus slowed at a red light, turned slightly toward her. "Miss Kane." "Isabelle," she corrected quietly. "Isabelle," he repeated, tasting the unfamiliar softness of it. "If standing up for what's right makes you weak, then maybe the world's measuring strength wrong." The light changed. Neither of them moved. Her eyes glistened as she said, "You really believe that?" "I believe you're human. And that's enough." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged. Fragile. The next morning, the tabloids exploded. Isabelle Kane seen with her driver. The Ice Queen's secret companion? Paparazzi photos of them leaving the event flooded the internet. By noon, her PR team was in full panic mode. The board demanded an emergency meeting. Inside her office, Isabelle stared at the headlines in disbelief. "They're tearing me apart for having a conversation," she said bitterly. Marcus stood near the door, uncertain if he should even be there. "You don't owe them an explanation. They think this is a scandal," she said, her voice shaking. "A billionaire woman and her black driver. A cliché they'll use to destroy me." "Then let them try," Marcus said firmly. "They can't destroy something they never built." She turned to face him fully now, anger and emotion warring behind her eyes. "You don't understand. These men, these investors, have been waiting for me to slip. And now they'll use this to prove I don't belong. Marcus stepped closer. Then let me stand with you. For once, you don't have to fight alone. Her breath caught. The world outside her office was chaos, but inside, it went perfectly still. For the first time, Isabelle didn't see Marcus as her driver. She saw him as her equal, and that terrified her more than any headline ever could. The storm hit fast. By Monday morning, every business outlet, gossip site, and social feed was buzzing about Isabelle Kane and her driver affair. Investors demanded answers. Board members whispered about ethical boundaries. And Isabelle, the woman, who had stared down billion-dollar deals without blinking, looked like someone carrying the weight of two worlds on her shoulders. Marcus noticed it the moment she stepped into the car. Her jaw was tight, her voice quiet. "To the headquarters," she said. "No detours." The ride was silent until halfway through the drive when she whispered, "They're calling for a vote of no confidence." Marcus gripped the wheel. "Because of us?" "Because of me," she corrected. "They're saying I've compromised my judgment. That I'm distracted." He wanted to tell her that she was stronger than all of them combined, that no boardroom full of entitled men could define her worth. But instead, he said the only thing he could. "I'm sorry this is happening." She turned her gaze toward him. "Don't apologize for being the only good thing in my life right now." Those words stayed with him all day. That evening, she called. "Marcus, come to the penthouse, please." When he arrived, the city glittered beneath the glass walls, but she wasn't admiring it. She stood by the window, barefoot, her usual armor of confidence stripped away. "They told me to end this," she said flatly. "To end us." Marcus took a slow breath. "And what did you say?" "I didn't." She turned toward him, her eyes red-rimmed. "Because I don't know what to say. You're the one thing that feels right in a life that's built on pressure and pretense. But if I lose this company," he stepped closer, "then you start another. You rebuild. But you don't trade your soul for their comfort." She let out a shaky laugh. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," he said. "It's just worth it." The words hung between them. Then she whispered, "Marcus, I'm scared." "So am I," he admitted. "But I'd rather face the world scared with you than safe and alone." That broke her. She stepped into his arms, and for the first time since her father's funeral, Isabelle Kane cried. Not because she was weak, but because she was finally allowed to. The next morning, Isabelle walked into the boardroom like a storm contained in silk. Marcus waited outside, pacing until the double doors opened. The board chair's voice echoed, "Miss Kane, this behavior is unbecoming of your position." Isabelle's response was calm, clear, and final. "Then perhaps it's time my position changes." When she emerged, she was trembling, but free. "Did you quit?" Marcus asked. "No," she said with a faint, defiant smile. "I chose." And just like that, the Ice Queen melted completely. Would you risk everything for love if it meant finally being free? Type love over fear if you believe some battles are worth losing everything for. The morning after Isabelle's defiant stand, the city felt different, quieter, as if it too was holding its breath. Every news outlet had splashed her photo across the front page. CEO defies board for love. Some called her reckless. Others called her brave. But Isabelle didn't care what they called her anymore. When Marcus arrived to pick her up, she was already waiting by the curb. No assistants, no security detail, no entourage. Just Isabelle Kane, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I figured you could use one," she said, handing him a cup. He blinked, smiling. "You made this?" "I pressed the button on the machine," she replied with mock seriousness. "That counts." They both laughed, a sound that felt like a sunrise after a storm. As the day unfolded, news cameras trailed them everywhere. They didn't hide. They didn't run. Isabelle walked beside Marcus, not behind tinted windows. When a reporter shouted, "Is it true you're risking your empire for this man?" she stopped, faced the cameras and said, "No, I'm choosing a better one." Her words went viral within hours. But behind the courage was exhaustion, the emotional cost of defiance. That night, Marcus found her sitting alone on her balcony, barefoot again, staring at the city lights. "Do you ever miss who you were?" he asked gently. "No," she said after a pause. "I just wish I'd found me sooner." He joined her on the floor, their shoulders brushing. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything they didn't need to say. Days later, Isabelle called an emergency press conference. Every journalist in the city gathered, expecting a resignation speech. Instead, she walked to the podium with Marcus beside her. "I've spent years building a company that values profit over people," she began. "That ends today. From now on, Kane Industries will lead with integrity, not fear. And yes," she paused, glancing at Marcus, "I am in love with this man. He's shown me that success without humanity is failure in disguise." The room erupted in questions, flashes, and chaos. But Isabelle stood tall, her hand finding Marcus's without hesitation. By the next week, half the board had resigned. The other half voted unanimously to keep her on as CEO. Investors saw something new in her: authenticity, purpose, courage. Stocks rose. Public support flooded in. That weekend, Isabelle and Marcus took Maya to the city park. For the first time, there were no schedules, no cameras, no masks. Maya fed ducks at the pond while Isabelle watched her with quiet awe. "She's amazing," Isabelle whispered. "So are you," Marcus said. When Maya turned and shouted, "Miss Isabelle, are you my new mommy yet?" Isabelle froze, then smiled. "Not yet, sweetheart," she said softly, "but I'm hoping to be." Marcus looked at her, the woman who had once ruled the city from behind glass walls, now kneeling in the grass. Laughing with his daughter, he realized then she hadn't just changed her world. She'd changed his, and together they'd rewritten what love was allowed to look like. The morning after Isabelle's defiant stand, the city felt different, quieter, as if it too was holding its breath. Every news outlet had splashed her photo across the front page. CEO defies board for love. Some called her reckless. Others called her brave. But Isabelle didn't care what they called her anymore. When Marcus arrived to pick her up, she was already waiting by the curb. No assistants, no security detail, no entourage. Just Isabelle Kane, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I figured you could use one," she said, handing him a cup. He blinked, smiling. "You made this?" "I pressed the button on the machine," she replied with mock seriousness. "That counts." They both laughed, a sound that felt like a sunrise after a storm. As the day unfolded, news cameras trailed them everywhere. They didn't hide. They didn't run. Isabelle walked beside Marcus, not behind tinted windows. When a reporter shouted, "Is it true you're risking your empire for this man?" she stopped, faced the cameras and said, "No, I'm choosing a better one." Her words went viral within hours. But behind the courage was exhaustion, the emotional cost of defiance. That night, Marcus found her sitting alone on her balcony, barefoot again, staring at the city lights. "Do you ever miss who you were?" he asked gently. "No," she said after a pause. "I just wish I'd found me sooner." He joined her on the floor, their shoulders brushing. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything they didn't need to say. Days later, Isabelle called an emergency press conference. Every journalist in the city gathered, expecting a resignation speech. Instead, she walked to the podium with Marcus beside her. "I've spent years building a company that values profit over people," she began. "That ends today. From now on, Kane Industries will lead with integrity, not fear. And yes," she paused, glancing at Marcus, "I am in love with this man. He's shown me that success without humanity is failure in disguise." The room erupted in questions, flashes, and chaos. But Isabelle stood tall, her hand finding Marcus's without hesitation. By the next week, half the board had resigned. The other half voted unanimously to keep her on as CEO. Investors saw something new in her: authenticity, purpose, courage. Stocks rose. Public support flooded in. That weekend, Isabelle and Marcus took Maya to the city park. For the first time, there were no schedules, no cameras, no masks. Maya fed ducks at the pond while Isabelle watched her with quiet awe. "She's amazing," Isabelle whispered. "So are you," Marcus said. When Maya turned and shouted, "Miss Isabelle, are you my new mommy yet?" Isabelle froze, then smiled. "Not yet, sweetheart," she said softly, "but I'm hoping to be." Marcus looked at her, the woman who had once ruled the city from behind glass walls, now kneeling in the grass, laughing with his daughter. He realized then she hadn't just changed her world, she'd changed his, and together they'd rewritten what love was allowed to look like. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll away, share it with someone who still believes love can break barriers. Let's keep spreading hope, not hate. Comment below where you're watching from and tell us what you learned from Marcus and Isabelle's journey. Every like, share, and comment helps us push back against racism, one story at a time. Together, we're building a world where love wins every single time.